joined with them. Welcome. We also want to welcome, before we do that, we need to approve our agenda, but I want to inform everybody that there's been a minor change. Councilmember Shaun Abreu, who can be seen up on the screen, will be joining us this evening briefly, and he is the first item up on the agenda instead of Roberta's DNS discussion. So I'm just putting that in as a minor change. And if that's okay with everybody, I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
So, okay, great. So we have that approved. I want to welcome our new Parks and Environment members, Sofia, Vala, and Audrey Isaacs. Audrey is a veteran member of the board, and Sofia Vala is brand new to the board, but welcome. I also want to inform all the Parks and Environment Committee members that our next meeting will be on not on the second Monday of and not on the third Monday of the month, but on the second Monday in January and February, because of the long weekends, President's Day and MLK Day. Right. So our next meeting will be on the 13th of January, and in February, it'll be on the 10th of February. So please mark your calendars. With that, I want to welcome Council Member Shaun Abreu.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'll be very brief. I want to thank the community board for having me this evening. I want to just talk very briefly about some of the parks adjacent things that we funded in Community Board 7 and from 96th Street and north to 110th. In this past year's budget, we funded $1.4 million to redo the Riverside park turf replacement. We're bringing synthetic turf replacement at 103rd and 104th Street for their soccer field. This past year, we also brought $3 million for the Happy Warrior Playground, which has been a source of concern for the neighborhood, and I believe Community Board 7 also recommended it as a need for renovations. We also brought $550,000 to bring basketball courts to Douglas houses on the west side. There are some things on our radar. We understand the need to bring water access to the West 104th Street Garden. That's something that remains a priority for us. In terms of budget priorities for the neighborhood, participatory budgeting is well underway. There have been a lot of ideas submitted within Community Board 7, especially north of 96th Street. The next step is getting budget delegates. So if any of you guys want to be a budget delegate, Alyssa from my team, my Director of Constituent Services, is on here. And that's one good way to make sure that we have a lot of representation on the west side. And as you know, the voting process will take place in the spring. We are working with our friends of conservancy groups. And we also just recently passed a bill that Gail sponsored, which would bring composting to our parks. We also have a bill that I'm lead sponsor on that would require community garden composting, that would require DSNY to collect organics at our local community gardens. So just want to thank the community board for its fight in fighting for a lot of these resources. I'm hearing you. And again, thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to open it up to questions from our committee and from the Transportation Committee. So I think, Roberta, you had your hand up.
Thank you so much for the Happy Warrior and for Frederick Douglass. That's been on our district needs and budget priorities for a long time. And I also thank you for having your budget person meet with us every year. That's a big help when we know what specific items you're looking at. I know the Joan of Arc complex is in your district, and we're looking. I think partial funds are there, but there's still need for funding.
For where?
For the Joan of Arc complex.
Yes, you're talking about the school, right?
Yeah, they're trying to do a playground that would fit the needs of the community and would be similar to the playground, the Bloomingdale playground. So
That is
for-
the playground that's adjacent to PS3, that's literally on PS33's backyard. That will be a huge priority for me in the next budget cycle.
Excellent, thank you.
You got it.
Is there anybody else who has a question or a comment from either of the two committees? Is there anybody from the public who may have a question or a comment for Councilmember Abreu? Is there?
Find out in a minute.
Is there anybody on the Zoom who has a question? Any hands raised?
No hand raised.
Okay, no hands raised. And do you have anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you so much for your words, your time. As the Parks and Environment Committee, we are very grateful for your support of all our parks and also of your work on the Sanitation and Solid Waste Committee, because I truly believe that, somebody said that if you're lucky, you will never need the fire department in your life. If you're very lucky, you'll never need the police department to deal with personally. But I think each and every one of us is touched by the services that sanitation and solid waste provides every single day. So we're very, very grateful for your work on them and also for being such a good steward of our parks. We at the board have been paying more close attention to quality of life issues. Recently, we have an update later on News Racks, a bill that Eric Botcher
Yes,
has.
yes. I voted for that one too. That's a great, it's gonna make
So
our streetscape nicer.
Exactly. So a lot of these very small things that maybe we don't really, they're not front of mind, but they make a huge difference. Improvements to lighting, to waste management, trash collection. That's the environment part of our Parks and Environment Committee's work, and we are very grateful for your stewardship in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you. I see Beverly is on here too. Appreciate everything the board is doing. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Alyssa, for facilitating this. Thank you. Budget. Yeah.
Oh, next up on our agenda, we are going to invite Roberta to talk about our district needs statement. And just present. Roberta's from the budget and strategy meeting, so she'll be able to talk us through.
This is my third time hearing this, Roberta. It's okay. I could give it.
Yeah.
And we hope it sinks in. So Parks Committee is pretty good about stuff, although this year we got materials pretty late, which is just unfortunate. So I'm recommending that the committee start looking with Riverside Park, Central Park, John Harold from Riverside. I'm not sure who you meet with from Central.
We meet the Conservancy.
And Matt Gingrich, who does
Yes.
the smaller playgrounds. Schedule that over the next few months.
Okay.
And, they don't need a lot of time, but if they come in for 20 minutes or so, just to give you an update. We've been meeting I know we'll invite you when we're meeting with people from Shaun's office and also from Gail's office, because we often talk about the park. So, so when we have our budget meeting, we'll let you know if somebody from the committee wants to join us.
Are your meetings scheduled on a regular basis?
No.
Once a month?
No. The budget committee meets as needed. And our work is very labor intensive at certain points of the year, so we don't have a monthly meeting. We get material, so we submitted all the, let me just, give not everyone is. a lot of people are new to this, even though Andrew's heard it 3 times. So the budget committee meets as needed, but we have certain schedules we have to meet. So we are mandated by city charter, our community board to create a district needs statement. And we are also mandated to give our budget and capital expense budget requests. We do this, we press send no later than October 30th. For the fiscal, we will be doing this for fiscal year 2027 because the fiscal year starts in July. So we are now in fiscal year 2025, even though it's still 2024. And what we do is there is a narrative part, and that there are the specific, which includes some of the district needs, which are not necessary budget requirements. So, for example, we want more affordable housing, even though we don't necessarily say we want building X with 500 units. We do ask for specific things such as the Happy Warrior Playground, which was in great disrepair. And people were not used to, parents were not bringing their children there because the playground was empty. But it's surrounded by a lot of children and a lot of groups that could be using it. So the fact that it's now usable. Frederick Douglass has been done in 3 different stages, and I believe this is the 3rd stage that has been funded by Shaun. So what I'm suggesting is that if you divide the community board up into sections, which transportation is very good about doing, and have a couple of people go and look at some of the playgrounds or some of the parks and see what you can see. You know, go at a time when children are there, go at a time when children aren't there, see if there's flooding. If there's flooding, take a picture of the flooding. A picture is worth 1,000 words. It doesn't have to be a great picture. We are now able to put photos into our district needs and also into our budget requests. And having a photo of, a playground that has water, so after a rainstorm, going there and taking a photo, we can do it. Doug, I know you're always talking about the entrances into Riverside Park not being accessible.
Yeah.
It'd be helpful to have, I know I've asked for this in the past, but have not received it, to have a picture of what an accessible entrance looks like next to an unaccessible.
I was just writing that down. Thank you for remembering.
And if different people take responsibility for different pieces of it, then it's not onerous for the committee chairs. I recommend reading the district needs, but specifically parks and environment and sanitation, because that is basically what you guys look at.
Yeah.
We can add to it. I don't want you writing, you don't need to write stuff. I need bullet points and data. We're trying to put it into one voice. So it's almost easier to write from bullet points and data than it is to rewrite something that people have written. I mean, unless you're a good writer and can see how we've structured it, it's not written that way. But we don't want you to do the work. We're more than willing to do the work.
Right. Okay.
And you've had, so we'll get in February, we'll get back from city planning, the agency's responses to our budget requests from October. And many of them are the kind of responses I used to get from my children when they were growing up, which is, we'll think about it. But the city doesn't actually say, we'll think about it. The city says, oh, talk to the agency about it. Well, the agency was supposed to send a response, so that isn't very helpful, but we will send you, which we do, we write a letter back to the city planning, telling them our responses to what their responses were. And we will send you, as soon as we get it, their responses. So and I usually call the committee chairs and we go over the list and we decide what kind of responses we're gonna have.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is for fiscal year 2027.
This will be
Okay.
for fiscal year 20, the responses will be from fiscal year 2026.
Yeah.
And then we'll start working on fiscal year 2027.
Next year.
And some And I will also send you a list of what's been funded, which I usually send you.
Yeah.
And so it's possible that when we get this report back in February, that we may have some items that are funded.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Shaun has funded certain things and Gail funds other things, and some are funded by the city and some aren't. Any questions?
Any
That's been a top priority of ours, so we're so lucky that we got funding for them. You know, Frederick Douglass,
Right.
now
Yeah.
Happy Warrior and.
Yeah. And the other thing we can use is if, for example, Frederick Douglass, if you know this, or any, if you know there's a school with a PTA nearby, the PTA will write a letter saying how important this playground is for people. We can include the platform that city planning has upgraded to is so much easier to use. That we can now easily insert photos, easily insert, we could
Right.
always do it, but it was impossible
Yeah.
unless you were a lot more sophisticated about it than I was. But I'm now capable of doing it, which means that almost everyone can do that. Well, not quite, but not all, not at all.
All right.
Anyway, may I say?
Yeah.
And even though most people at this table are very familiar with it, and I've also sat through a few, but that's great because it's repetition is good to get it into your memory. That the district needs statement is just about one of the most important things that any community board does. It's one of the only things that we're mandated for. It's how we speak to our priorities in the neighborhood. So when your friends and family say, "What do you guys do at a community board?" DNS is right at the top of the list. So.
And we don't always get the things we ask for,
No.
but it's good that we're on the record having asked for them.
Right, and
Absolutely.
sometimes repetition means when we do it year after year, we finally do get
Yeah.
it, so, you know,
Yeah.
it'd be.
Squeaky wheels get the grease.
You
And
got it.
some things we asked for, which we know we're not gonna get because they're high in the sky. Every year we ask for NYCHA
Yeah.
to be improved, and we're gonna keep doing it, even though we've been told that certain things aren't happening. So there's certain things we're gonna ask for. There's certain things we ask for that aren't funded, that, you know, cannot be funded, but that's one of them. Our top three priorities for the last, I think, 10 years at least, have been food insecurity, affordable housing, which we lose every year, we lose affordable housing, and quality public education from pre-K to 12.
Well, we have a question from.
Oh, sure, let me do that. Just taking one point there, Roberta's about just mentioned about NYCHA and the needs. Which is, you know, we really do have a considerable and such an important part of our district is NYCHA housing. And I think that we did at one time reach out to NYCHA representatives. I think when Roberta was chair as well, I think it would be very helpful now for this committee as well as others to be reaching out or via the district manager or the chair to NYCHA representatives and do it as quickly as you know, it's feasible to begin to have the communication, which I know it's not the easiest thing, but it's very, very important because it's a significant population. And in terms of parks related issues and certainly environmental ones, we really would do very well to be working with them and be able to then perhaps to provide some recommendations in our priorities that are better informed, that we know and that we've gotten them along the way. So I certainly would urge that. And I mean, as a member of the committee, if there's subcommittee work to be done with that and all, I would be glad to help with that.
On the parks
Okay, thank
issue,
Thank you.
all of the playgrounds in NYCHA
Yeah.
projects are now upgraded. Thanks,
All of them.
all of them, thanks to Shaun's
Done, yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And Gail's work,
Yeah.
and I think Brad funded, somebody else did funded, I think Brad funded one of the
Why,
playgrounds.
Wise, I think Rad funded Wise, didn't they?
No, he funded
That was, it was private.
Amsterdam.
Okay.
So I think right now,
Wise was-
Wise
When you
Towers.
said and do it, I
Wise
thought you were
Towers
referring to
was
another agency.
That's right. Exactly.
Wise was.
Okay.
We can find
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was, wouldn't have been, it would have been Amsterdam.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Ethel, for the offer. Any other questions for Roberta? Roberta, when is your next meeting with either Shaun or Gail?
We'll probably meet after they've done their participatory budgeting.
Yeah,
So we'll probably meet
Because you
in,
told me before you'd be traveling.
I think we meet in April, end of March or April,
oh, okay,
and we'll let you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But we'll be working before
Yeah,
that. We'll get other information before
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Once we hear back from the city planning, we'll get information as quickly as possible.
Yeah. All right. If there are no other questions for Roberta on the Zoom, anybody? No? All right. So thank you very much, Roberta.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Moving along, before the next item on the agenda, I just want to make a few quick announcements. I hope everybody has scanned in their attendance, by the way.
I'm sorry, what was the last? Everybody has.
Scanned in. and-
Scanned in their attendance? Okay.
Okay.
Also, we have two major presentations coming up now. I want to say, let's just get through the presentations. I would like everybody to hold their questions and their comments till the end. We will get to everybody multiple times if we have to, but it's just the flow of the meeting and the efficiency is served very well if we just hold our questions and comments till the end. I also want to reach out to all the members of the public who might be here or who might be on the Zoom. If you are here for the last item on the agenda, which is the Central Park Drive study, we are not there yet, but if you would like to speak on it, have a question, feedback, comment, anything, you can either sign the physical sign-up sheet, which is on the table over there by the door, or you can maybe put in the Q&A, the Zoom Q&A, just a statement saying that I have a question or I would like to speak for the Central Park Drive study, just because we're expecting, I think, quite a bit of interest. So we would like, in the interest of time and in the interest of planning our meeting out better, we would like to know how many speakers we have. Once again, everybody will be heard, but we just would like to know how many people there are that we have to get through tonight. So with that, you can.
Yeah, we also recommend that when you guys are going through this, to take a note of the slide number that you guys have questions on, so it makes it easier for us to refer back to it later on. So note where the slide is and note your question then. The next the next presentation is the Verdi Square presentation from the Parks Department. This is a discussion and a potential resolution for accessibility and lighting improvements in Verdi Square. We have, I think they're online, Luis Guapa from the Parks Department. We also have, I think,
Kathleen Murphy and
Kathleen Murphy and Quentin Webb from the Friends of Verdi Square who will be giving us his presentation. And this is a potential resolution.
Actually, my name is Raymond Palmares. I don't know if you can see me. I'm the Deputy Director for Engineering here, and I'll be doing the presentation. Luis is online with me as well. Let me share the screen.
Can you spell out your last name, please?
Sure, it's it's misspelled in my label. It's P-A-L. Oh, it's fixed now. P-A-L-M-A-R-E-S.
Yeah.
So I noticed on the agenda that it was labeled as being accessibility and lighting, but this project started back in February as a water service project to bring water to Verdi Square. And provide some quick couplers in order to water the plantings. The accessibility of the path, it was always part of the project in that monument area, which I'll get to. And the lighting was just recently added as of like this month. So just wanted to clarify, and I'll cover that in this presentation. This is Community Board 7. Our designer is Cameron Engineer, who's now transitioned to IMEG company. Our project managers is Louis Gualpa and Callie Sue, who's on leave right now. And our budget's 835, about 778 from City Council and 57 from Borough President. The goals here are to provide water service, supply irrigation for gardens on both sides of Verdi Square. Installation of RPZ, backflow device, and water meter in a vandal-proof enclosure. This is a health code requirement. Installation of 2 quick couplers for watering. Install accessible path and inches on the eating area behind the Verdi statue. And as I mentioned, just recently added was install additional light poles to increase lighting in the park. Just kind of go over these quickly. As I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the location of Verdi Square. It's not in a flood zone. There's probably some localized flooding under heavy storms. Again, there's a train station as part of Verdi Square. All the parks within walking, within the area of Verdi Square itself. Just an aerial view. Parks property is actually just this triangle, and I apologize if it's a little difficult to see, but it's actually just this triangle. This portion of Verdi Square is really part of MTA. Again, just this is water supply for the park. And this is our project area, provide water service to water the planting within this triangle. And we'll extend and put a coupler so you could water the planting over the MTA area. This is just a quick site plan of the existing conditions. Right now, we have that Moby mat that's in that seating area here. Apologize, Broadway's up on the top of the screen and West 73rd is on the right side. So north is, actually the direction is off here, but north is to the right. Pictures of that seating area in the monument. There's a curb that comes in, and again, there's just a Moby mat that's used to access that area. Again, this area in the red rectangle here is really the limit of the MTA tunnel here, and Parks property is just this triangle portion here. We're planning to bring water in from 73rd onto the corner, and we'll get a better view of it. But the water service will come in. We'll have RPZ at the corner of West 73rd and Amsterdam, bring it across to the other side and install a quick coupler so you could irrigate this portion of, or water this portion of planting. Just a site plan again. This darkened area here is the planned path. We're going to run through from inside the plaza over to the sidewalk on West 73rd Street. And again, the water service, I was mistaken. The water service is actually coming from this street here. This is kind of a rendering of what the path would be. We'd cut the curb to eliminate that that raised edge, and then put asphalt paving flat. So that way there's no more, I think there's a temporary ramp there now. The ramp would be eliminated, and you could, this would be all level all the way to the West 73rd portion. It's just your standard asphalt, 1.5 inch with a 3-inch binder course, and then it's just on compacted grade. We also propose to have a garden rail on some of the edging portions of the seating area. We have the RPZ enclosure, as I mentioned, on the corner, and again, I'm sorry, it's difficult to see, but we'll have it hidden with shrubs, so it's not, completely visible by the public. Again, this is a view from West 73rd. That's shrubs here on the corner. I'll have a couple of pictures of the RPZ structure. It'll be this aluminum enclosure above grade. It'll be painted black as to disguise it. And again, we'll put shrubs around it to hide it, but it does need to be accessible by DEP and maintenance. Water will be shut off in the winter time. So we need to access this, and the water will be, the service will be winterized and drained and then opened again, and in the springtime for the planting season. Our quick couplers are just these standard concrete boxes. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it has a special tool that it inserts into this adapter and provides water. Inside here is just the piping, and the adapter allows hose connections to it. Just a quick layout of the RPZ structure. It'll contain a water meter and a RPZ inside. RPZ is a backflow device that prevents water from being sucked from the property back into the water main, to prevent any contamination in there. And this aluminum vandal-proof box that will be painted black and concealed with shrubs. This is the shrub we're planning to surround it with cherry laurel. Regarding the light poles, again, this was added just recently. There were 6 poles that were proposed. These 4 here, which are along that, this is the monument for reference, West 73rd Broadway, would be along the benches just outside that planting area. I know there's some existing lighting here and here, but we understand there's more lighting was requested, especially in front of the MTA entrance. These 2 light poles were proposed, but they present some difficulty, especially one is they're on top of the MTA structure. 2 is we're not sure how we would do the foundations for these yet. Our electrical engineers are doing calculations right now just to make sure we're at least meeting the minimum requirements of lighting for this area. The new standards require that these lighting be LED. I think they're sodium. Sorry, I'm not familiar with the bulbs, but I believe they're like a sodium-based bulb, so they're not as bright as the LED. They're also checking if 4 are necessary. They'll see if, again, we'll know sometime later this week with their study and their calculations if there's going to be enough lighting on here. But again, any deep structures or large structures in this area present difficulty for us because it's right on top of the MTA structure itself. This is the proposed location. Those 2 light poles were, want to be here. Again, there's a MTA vent grate that's right in that area, and the MTA entrance here. This is the light pole. We're going to match the existing light poles on site. So we'd be putting the same type of poles. It's this B12 light pole. And these are typically maintained by DOT. So we still we were required to get DOT approval. And if we working in this area, even with the water and the path and these light poles, will need MTA approval just because of our proximity to the MTA station. That's it. I guess questions or comments. And forgive me, I present like an engineer, so I I know there's concerns and questions that the public has that, I I fail to sometimes see or plan for, but hopefully you have a good idea of
Thank
what
you.
we're planning.
That's okay. Yeah, Barbara.
I thought this was a great presentation. It was very clear, and thank you. And these are all very welcome additions to Verdi Square. So this is fantastic. Thank you. One silly question. I thought you said eating area in Verdi Square. I don't know what an eating area is. I live right there. I'm there every single day. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, sorry if I, I misrepresented it, but there's a seating area. I said eating, maybe seating area. This area here by the monument. Let me find the photo here. There's here on the corner of West 73rd and Verdi. I guess it's Amsterdam. There's a monument here, and in that planting area in the fence, you can't see it because of these trees, but there's a gravel area that has. See if I could zoom in. Let me escape from this, and I could zoom in a little better for you. Yeah, there's some movable tables and chairs that are in that area. This is actually this is with the proposed path, so it doesn't actually look like this, but there's that blue Moby mat that's in that area, and this would provide access from this is here is West 73rd Street, and it would curve into the plaza. So this would allow this would be a flush access with the sidewalk here in 73rd, and would connect to the plaza area within Verdi Square. So this entrance is this far entrance over back here on West 73rd, and it's just a path that curves around through this area. So right now, let me find that photo. Right now it's just this blue, like you see at the beaches, the Moby mat, and see this ramp. There's like, I believe this is a plywood ramp. So you would have to like roll up the ramp, and then it just goes onto this this blue mat here. So we'd be replacing that, and we'll cut this curb here. I'm sorry, I'm going beyond your question. This is the this is that seating area I was talking about, and our path would kind of curve around here.
I think Andrew had a question,
Yes.
and then Ethel after Andrew.
Can you tell me if you've received all the approvals you need from the MTA as of this point?
I don't believe we received the no impact. Lewis, if you could confirm.
No, Raymond, we have not received the letter of no impact. Currently, our drawings are still with MTA for review.
Yeah, and it didn't include the light poles. As I mentioned, the light poles were just added recently. Since we're in this area doing the design, like this started in February, where we just went out to the site for the water service and this path, and the light poles were just recently added to the project.
When are you hoping to receive everything you need by?
Well, we still, before we transmit, so we're planning to. June is our transmittal date for this project. We need all the approvals in before we could go out to bid. So by June, we're already reaching out for LPC and PDC. I think that's what we need a letter of support for, because of the work we're doing, especially near this monument.
Okay. Ethel?
On this area here, and perhaps I missed it, but is it the case when you started now looking at that will you be making where you see that there's a lift here where the where the gate is also, are you going to make that all flat so you're not walking up? And that is, I want to make sure because I got that, and that seemed to be a very good thing to do. And then to integrate from the sort of outside, then to make it accessible and flat and visually good as you then walk through the park. So is that so that you're not changing the grade? All this is going to go away, right? This step up is in the art. Okay,
It's right there in the visual, right in there in the.
Yeah,
yes, it was harder for me to see, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, no, I'd like to hear your answer.
Yes,
Raymond.
that's correct. We plan to cut the curb. We're cutting, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
We are cutting the curb and this is a rendering. But we will cut the curb and this is going to be flush, so there's no more curb as in the previous slide.
Yes.
And going in. I just have to
Yeah,
say
we're
that
eliminating
because-
this so that you won't have this ramp anymore. This is going to be cut flush.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sure.
Doug, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. I'm so glad to see that you're giving this some tender loving care because over the years, as many of us may recall, it was a disaster with infested with vermin. It was really a rat colony there. But I know that you changed some of the plants, and so I hope that you'll continue whatever you're doing to be resistant to the vermin, because it really overtook that space a number of years ago. The question I just have for you, since you're bringing water in, will there be a water fountain? And what are the hours? Because if I recall correctly, I have eaten at the seating area, and if I recall, there are certain hours that are open and closed. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with the hours. Unfortunately, Steve Simon, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, he wasn't able to join. So I don't know. I'm assuming the hours follow the and please don't quote me, but will follow the dusk to dawn hours that for most of the parks. But I'm just a lowly engineer here at Parks. Sorry, I'm not involved with the maintenance of it. As far as the drinking fountain, we didn't have a drinking fountain included in this, right, Lewis? This wasn't. This one is just quick couplers for irrigation.
That is correct.
Yeah, so this one was originally asked for just for water service. We're having with the number of trees that surround here, we're having a little difficult time kind of finding a path through for the water service itself, just because there are a ton of tree roots in there, and the original ask was for irrigation purposes. So there was no, to answer your question, there was no drinking fountain planned for this area.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Jamie, go ahead.
So I have the answer to the hours.
Okay.
Sorry, my question was 24 hours.
Right.
It says it's
What's
open 24
hours?
hours. The park is open 24 hours, besides which you could just jump over that little gate.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's interesting.
actually, I'm Kathleen, it's actually closed. It's open at 8 in the morning and it closes, I think, around 9 or so. It's supposed to be locked both nights. Yeah, it is closed at night.
I'm glad somebody here knows more than my AI.
Probably the park itself is.
It turns out to be a little flexible, as you can imagine.
That's right here.
But they
Okay.
probably.
But I actually have a question. I didn't raise my hand to be a know-it-all, though I like to play that role. I have a couple questions about the design. I can't tell from the rendering. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. This actually is one of my favorite places in New York City. I love Verdi Square. I don't know why, I love it. And I kind of like it the way it is. So did you say when you started out why you feel, I agree with Ethel that the curb cut idea is fabulous for accessibility, but did you begin, and forgive me if you did, by saying why we feel all of this is necessary and what the price tag will be for doing all this?
This is all existing. It's just a water thing.
Yeah, but I want to hear, can you repeat, Raymond, what you feel? I understand the water.
Actually, can I just interject? I think, Raymond, you can also answer, but I want to also call on Kathleen Murphy. Kathleen is one of senior in the Friends of Verdi Square group.
Mhm.
So they're a community group that has taken care of the Verdi Square area for many, many years now. And maybe as when the question is asked about the need for these changes, maybe Raymond as well as Kathleen can speak about the need for these changes.
And doing such a marvelous job, that is why I'm asking the question.
Yes. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to jump in. And again, thanks CB7 for all of your work. You know, we know how your time is valuable and everybody's given such time to make our little patch of the world better. So yes, I'm Kathleen Murphy. I've been on the board of Friends of Verdi Square for 6 years. Quentin couldn't join us tonight. So the irrigation system, I think, was proposed a good couple of years ago, and it's going to make a huge difference in the park because especially this summer with the drought, we lost a lot of plants. We've just been, it's a feat of engineering to see us drape hoses all the way across roads and fences and the garden for the last several years just to try to keep the garden watered. So that was the original idea there. Raymond, if you don't mind, I've got a couple of questions. Where the source of the water is on that 73rd Street and the corner there will be a coupler there. So there will be an ability to water the seating area and as well as a coupler in the meadow, which is part of the MTA. Is that correct?
There's going to be a coupler on the, sorry, let me zoom in again on this.
There's a coupler on the MTA side, which I see.
Yes.
Is there a coupler on the park side where it's originating on 73rd?
Yes.
Yes.
It's right here near the entrance to that path on 73rd.
Okay, terrific.
So we have those two.
Other question, originally, I think we had talked about putting a whole diamond grid. Right now, there's the MOBI map, as you've seen, and then there's gravel around it. We had talked about putting like a diamond grid in there with the asphalt in it, which would make the entire area ADA compatible, and that's changed.
Yeah, that's changed. So the diamond grid was proposed. So that diamond grid is basically, if you imagine, like just for everybody else, it's like egg crates with plastic egg crates that's porous, and it was proposed to be filled with gravel. The issue was our consultant, looking to make it accessible, was looking for paperwork or certification from the manufacturer of the diamond grid that it is accessible. And unfortunately, they only guarantee it's accessible if it's filled with concrete. So it just made it a material that we couldn't use. We do have the diamond grid with the gravel at some community gardens and at other parks, but they weren't, I don't know the background to those, but as far as the ADA, the certification for accessibility, the only way the manufacturer would guarantee it is if it came with, if it was filled with concrete. So, and sorry, to kind of explain further, we stuck with the asphalt, again, because of the tree roots. The asphalt provided us the lowest, since we want to make it flush, it's only about 3.5 inches in thickness. So it helped. It gave us some clearance from damaging the tree roots in this area. So that was another reason.
I see the path in there. What will be on the rest of the surface of the seating area then?
We're just gonna have it as the what it is now. I believe it's like a stone screening itself.
So you'll have a path that goes through with the gravel on the side.
Correct. And this will be flush, and I'm sorry, this will be flush and have I believe a wood edging to contain.
I just mentioned a couple things because what will happen is the chairs in there are extremely heavy metal. They are dragged around. They will be dragged across that asphalt all the time. which will damage the chairs and probably scrape the asphalt, just something to keep in mind. Not to mention the gravel that is on either side will also be kicked around. We're constantly taking it out of the actual gardens. It goes in 2 or 3 feet because the chairs are grabbed around. So the gravel will end up on the asphalt, which may present an ADA problem.
Right.
So just something to think about.
Yeah, we were speaking with Steve Simon, and I don't know if you're familiar with Brad Romaker and Max Goodstein, and they did mention that this rendering is, you know, an idealistic version. I know we were talking with Brad about some way to either, you know, top this with the gravel, you know, again, make it flat, but somehow to match so it didn't come out as much. But again, we're working with them. This is what we had as a rendering for now to make it clear of what our intent was through the seating area.
Can I ask you a question about lighting on, I think page 22? Because you mentioned there that there were 6 lights proposed. We didn't propose 6 lights, just FYI. We were asked I will mention to the Community Board 7, we have wanted a little more light in the park at night because we have 2 problematic areas. One is at the top of your drawing there, right at the north entrance of the subway station. That's where there's a lot of urination. That's where a lot of heroin use, a lot of needles. People come right out of the subway, they shoot up, they flick the needles right into the park right there. It is particularly dark. So we proposed only 1 torchlight there. There is already one about where your hand is, actually, Raymond. There's one that's already sitting up there. Yeah, so we only proposed 1 there and not 2. But again, that was not no deal breaker whatsoever. On the other, you come south where the 4 red dots are, we had talked to Brad and others about only putting an extra 2 in there because there's another problematic area. It's the second dot from the left there, which is particularly dark. Right around where one of the big bellies that was lit on fire last summer. And so we didn't propose 6 lights, which would be a lot. We just sort of suggested 3, just FYI.
Yeah, and then that's kind of what I recalled. Our project manager, who is on leave right now, I think she was out there. You might have met her, Callie Sue. She was, if you were out with that walk, I recall her telling us that there was 2 proposed lights, but when we asked Brad and Steve Simon's office, this is the dots they propose. But again, to our electrical engineers are doing the calculations and seeing what lighting. You know, these will be upgraded. Any new lighting will be LED, and I believe these existing lights in this area would also be upgraded to LED, which provide more illumination. So they're doing that calculation to see how much they did say that 4, you know, just offhand seemed like a lot, but you know, until we get their results, we won't know.
FYI, and I'm sure you probably know this. You know, there is a water source right at the north entrance of the subway. I just didn't know if you knew that. Yeah, see
no, I wasn't aware, and I'm filling in for our project managers on.
Yeah, if anyone needs to know kind of where that little hidden gem is, I'm happy to tell them. Me and the rats know exactly where to find it. So just so you know. The last thing too, again, thanks so much. You mentioned it goes out to bid in June. Does that mean that construction would not start next summer? It would have to wait another year, or is it possible that would start next summer?
No, it's actually going to take longer. We're going to transmit for procurement in June. We're trying to push it sooner, but because of this project, this contract is tied with another project, water service project in Riverside Oval up north. So these 2 projects are going out as one contract. With this project, because of the MTA, because of the these lighting now we're adding in needs DOT because they're maintaining it, and LPC and PDC approvals. It's taking us a little longer, but we're trying to push it to be transmitted sooner. So if we do transmit in June, procurement is like 9 to 12 months. So that means another 9 to 12 months from June, that's when it would go out to bid for
And
construction.
is everything tied together, Raymond? So that I would assume the water and digging up the plaza would be tied to the asphalt and the seating area flooring, but is the lighting tied as well to those two projects, or is that possibly done on its own time?
No, the lighting would be done at the same time. The reason it was added to this project was the lighting was going to be a separate project, but then we're thinking, well, we're digging in through here, we're coming across here. Well, it would make sense to why we closing the plaza twice almost in succession. So adding the lighting in and running there's conduit. We believe there's already conduit connecting these lights, so adding these lights would be simpler. As we said, the lighting here would be a little bit more difficult for us to install.
So the whole thing's tied together?
Yes, correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, Natasha. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Any questions for Verdi Square Park? Let me know. Happy.
Recognize me so I can follow up to my question that Kathleen has now followed up to about 15 times.
Yeah, I mean, I had to let Kathleen speak, even though she's a member of the public, but
she should speak, but I'd like to ask a follow-up to my.
Yeah, we will get to everybody. Everybody will get to speak, but we just have to, listen, give everybody some time.
But we have several items on tonight.
I understand, Ethel, but we do have this, we have to give this item its due course as well.
Exactly.
But if you have to leave early, like if anybody has to leave early, that's okay. Yes, go ahead.
I just have one quick follow-up.
Yes.
So if the initial impetus was irrigation, and Kathleen, Raymond can answer, anybody can answer, I assume it would be Raymond. I just want to understand if, as with any renovation project, as you got underway with the investigation and your wonderful renderings, it became a more extensive project than initially had been anticipated. Because it seems like quite an extensive project and one that is going to be quite expensive.
The lighting was added in recently. The path and the water service were originally included in the project itself. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Was that what you were asking? If we extended the amount of work on this site, or? I apologize I just to clarify what you're asking, but yeah, the path and the water was originally part of this contract, and we started that back in February. The lighting was just recently, but it was funded, so we decided to incorporate into the contract.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else from the board who has? Yes.
I would
go
just like
ahead.
to say that I applaud the extra lighting. I think that lighting fights crime better than anything else. And when you come out of the subway there are really dark areas, and the people who sit along that built-in bench that goes from the subway entrance to 73rd Street can be scary. And I think putting lights there is fantastic. So just spoken as a community member.
Yes, Doug.
No, I echo what Barbara said. I'm really glad that they're doing work. And I can say that having been there twice with friends that have disabilities, it was extremely difficult to navigate. That pad was just, when I saw the pad, which is like a rollout pad, I just thought, how could we possibly be doing something like that? So I think, I don't know how it all started, but I have to imagine the ADA compliance is a huge part of this, and I think it's going to be very well received.
Yeah, we're not voting on this, right? This is just.
We are, but we're not done with the discussion. Is there anybody else from the board in the room who would like, I'll get to you, in the room who would like to say something? I'll get to you.
Yeah, I'm knowing, for sure.
Is there anybody from the board on the Zoom who has a question? No? Okay. Daria, do you have a comment? And then we'll go to the people from the public who have something to say.
Oh, thank you. So I had a couple of questions, but they were for the most part answered. The only thing I would suggest is that if we are starting construction during a period like in June or the summertime, it's a very busy intersection. So I just need you to kind of incorporate being mindful of the staging and the timing of all of this, just because there's so many people around in that area. That's the only comment I have. But I think you sell engineer short. I think you gave a great presentation. So thank you.
All right, we had a couple of people from the public. Yes, go ahead. If you could just identify yourself and your affiliation. Are you from the?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Sheila Puder. I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilmember Brewer.
Yes.
I just wanted to pipe in one thing, is on the topic of lighting. Is that Cynthia Hornick, who you may know is our legislative budget director,
Yes.
who's on vacation for one more well-earned day. She actually back in September did a walkthrough with the Friends of and talked through a lot of these issues. And one of them was the lighting, particularly at the northern part, let's say the top part of the drawing, the MTA area that Raymond had mentioned. And so in November, I think 21st, the day it's sticking out of my head, the MTA did install the lighting there. And it's something that we've been in communication with Parks, of course, in coordination with MTA and with Friends of also making sure it's the right type of lighting to actually address this quality of life issue. And we've also communicated that with Steve at Parks also. I think we're all fans of lighting where it's appropriate, but also making sure that the lighting that's there is actually the type of lighting. Some of the torches are a little more muted and lovely, but may not for trouble areas like Catherine has mentioned, hit the right spot of lighting. But we're really excited about this. I think I'm really excited to have funding for this and to see all this going underway. So thanks so much.
Okay.
Sorry, last thing, and that's to say is that MTA says, again, if we feel like there's more needed, then we just get right back to them and they're gonna look at more options also.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room who has anything to say about this topic? Okay, anything from the Friends of Verdi Square or anybody else? Okay, so they've asked for, the Parks Department has asked for a resolution on this matter. We don't have a resolution written as yet, but on the basis of what we have seen over here, I think people are, from what I'm hearing, everybody is saying that this is a very positive project. It will bring about positive change to the quality of life, to the crime situation over there, to basically the quality of everybody's experience, whether you're a commuter or just a visitor, whether you are a person with disabilities or anything. So on the basis of what we have seen here, I would recommend that we vote on the this item as presented. Maybe one caveat that I would put in there is that we might ask the Parks Department to explore other materials for the gravel that surrounds the path. I don't know what that material could be, but that is something that we could put in our therefore clause. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay. So based on what we're seeing here, I'm going to call the question. And first we will go through the Parks Committee, Parks and Environment Committee only. So everybody in favor of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, everyone against? And I think that's it.
Elizabeth on just.
Oh, Elizabeth. All right. Hi, Elizabeth.
No,
Did you
sorry.
vote in favor? I'm sorry.
She's not. Sorry, forgive me.
Sarah's on the Zoom.
Yeah, Sarah's on the Zoom. Sarah, Carillo?
Oh, but we don't have a
We don't have
Zoom waiver.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Good again, but
Yeah, just to remind everybody who's on the committee, if you are on Zoom, you are supposed to get a Zoom waiver in advance from the co-chairs so that you are able to vote. You can always attend, you can always speak, you can always participate, but unless a formal Zoom waiver, you cannot vote. So we have 9000. And now I'm going to go to the non-committee members. Everybody in favor? 1, 2.
Yeah, Natasha, it's Elizabeth. I I did not request a waiver for parks, but I have waived myself for the last item that we're going to be discussing on the joint committee since I'm one of the co-chairs. So I won't vote on this.
Okay.
You vote twice on both committees?
No, but this is not a,
This is not-
this is not a joint item. This is just a parks item.
It's a non-board.
No, we, like, everybody can vote.
Yeah,
Non-committee members who are
This is not a joint item.
present.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, can you raise your hands again, whoever is voting in favor?
Wait,
No, you're
You're voted,
That's
so
what
it's
I'm
three.
so confused.
three, everybody against? Everybody abstaining? Okay. And everybody not voting for cause? Okay, so the motion passes 9-0-0-0 and 3-0-1-0. Thank you very much, Raymond and Luis and Kathleen Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we're going to move on to the final item on our agenda. First of all, I just want to make sure that Central Park Conservancy is on the Zoom.
We have David.
Yep, we're here. There's a couple of us here.
Okay, great. So before we start with this item, I just wanted to clarify a few of the procedures. Once again, please hold all your questions and comments until we are done, until the Conservancy is done with its presentation. We are going to also, if you're a community member, if you could sign up either on the physical sheet that's by the door here in the room, or if you could just put into the Q&A on the Zoom that you are here to speak on this issue. It will help us plan the meeting out better. We are going to take questions. Depending on how many people from the community have signed up, we'll take questions from the community, but we will limit them to just 2 questions and a brief statement, just for the sake of time. Everybody will be heard. And if you need to speak more, we will come back to you, time permitting. But we ask that you be brief and concise. We also ask that you, if you are from the public, if you could identify yourself by name and also your affiliation with our district, whether you live here, you work here, or you just pass through.
I remember dear.
We will then move on to CD7 members, and we will call on members of each committee in an alternating fashion, starting with transportation, since you are our guests. And also, we also ask our committee members, our CD7 members, to be concise in their questions and their feedback. So with that, I would like to welcome the Central Park Conservancy. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate this opportunity to talk about our drive study. I know you've all been very patient in waiting to see this, and now the moment has finally arrived. I am joined here by Erica Sofa, our Vice President for Park Stewardship, as well as Shatik Mitchell, our Director of Civic Engagement for the Conservancy. My name is David Saltonstall. I'm the Vice President for Government Relations, Policy, and Community Affairs at the Conservancy, and I do have a deck that I would love to just take you through, if I may. Everybody see that?
Not yet.
No.
Yeah. There we go.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, this is a project we began over a year ago, and when we began, we really laid out for ourselves three main goals. We would want to improve safety on the drives, which I think is everybody here acknowledges has become a slightly more hectic and chaotic place. We want to improve mobility on the drives, meaning how do you get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible and as safely as possible. And finally, we want to do all of that while maintaining the character of the park, which I think we all recognize as singular and not something we want to change too much. So, at the beginning of this process, we did an extensive amount of outreach, in addition to going to all the community boards around the park to solicit feedback, including CB7. We had a survey that asked a bunch of questions about what people thought about the drives. We got over 10,000 responses. We had a number of meetings with folks individually. We had open houses in the park. We had mapping tools, and we collected really just an enormous amount of data that included crash data and everything else that we could think of. We also looked around the world at other parks to see if there were any great examples of people who had managed to sort of balance all of the competing needs in a busy urban park space like Central Park. But essentially what we gleaned from all of that were a few key challenges. Obviously, there's a lot of different people doing different things on the drives. There are bikers, there are walkers, there are moms with strollers, there are delivery folks. There's all kinds of people out there doing different things. We definitely heard loud and clear that getting across the drive can be challenging for pedestrians. There's a certain amount of inconsistency in terms of the lane markings. One of the key things driving this is that cars have been banned from the park since 2019. And yet the drives themselves are effectively laid out as if there were still cars in there. The lane markings are designed for cars. The traffic signals are designed for cars. And it was clearly time to sort of take a fresh look. So that was the point of all the information we gathered at the outset. And where we've come now, I'm not going to read all these words, but we have developed 14 very specific recommendations for how to achieve our goals around safety and mobility and maintaining the character of the park. The near term, I will summarize as essentially repaving the entire 6-mile loop and restriping that loop in a way that we think will make a lot more sense. And I'm going to show you pictures of that in a second. The medium-term things are slightly more complicated. We do want to remove the traffic signals that are in there, but we want to replace them. I know the early coverage in the Times and elsewhere was not very clear about that. It made it sound like we were just going to rip out all the traffic signals and walk away. That's not the case. We are trying to replace the existing traffic signals with newer ones, more modern ones that are more aimed at pedestrians and bikers in the hopes that folks will actually pay more attention to them. We heard a lot from the biking community about getting across the park. It's really quite difficult to legally get across the park on a bike unless you're on 72nd Street or to a lesser degree on 102nd Street. So creating more options for folks who are trying to do that, we think will be safer and better for everybody. And a few other things. Longer term, there's also some intersections that clearly need some additional work that we know are dangerous, but would require things like moving curbs and things that would require a much longer process. We'd be going to landmarks preservation and other places like that. So to just give you a sense of what we're talking about here in the near term, when I talked about repaving and restriping, This is an excellent example of, I think, what you will see. Obviously, it's a rendering. Nobody should take anything too literally here, but the idea is to essentially create 3 lanes. One is the pedestrian / jogger lane on the inside of the loop. You see that there. There will probably be a slightly different materiality or texture to that to make it clear that it belongs to pedestrians and walkers. That double white line that you see right here will also be indented. It will be grooved, very slightly grooved, in a way that if you stepped on it, you would never even notice it. But if you're this biker and you roll over it, you're gonna feel a little rumble. And it's intended as a way to dissuade bikers from swerving in there at any time. This middle lane is for more casual bikers, people who are actually in the park, to see the park, to be there, to enjoy it. And then this outside lane, which today carries a lot of stuff. We're not really changing that. We're talking like emergency vehicles, horse carriages, pedicabs, work vehicles. And yes, under this rendering, we would include in that faster bikes, either people who are trying to go fast or you know, for biking events, or e-bikers and other e-mobility devices. We think it is better to actually give them a space and make it a space that's as far away as possible from pedestrians, but to just make it much more clear and intuitive to everybody where different folks are supposed to be. To drill down just a little bit on that, I mean, one of the things we saw when we went out there onto the parks is that they are actually they vary a lot in terms of how they are laid out right now. In some places, the space that is devoted to pedestrians and walkers is only about 8 feet wide. And in other places, it's more like 18 feet wide. So we want to add some consistency to that. And as you see over here on the right, pedestrians will be given a minimum of 10 feet, often much more. And those other 2 lanes will also be consistent across the stretch of the drive. To take the next step, what we are doing right now is an analysis of every single crosswalk in the park. There are 80 of them. And before you dig up the pavement, you have to know exactly what kind of interventions need to be made to make them safer. And, you know, there's a whole toolbox of things that the DOT avails themselves of to try and either slow people down or warn people that something is coming up, or, you know, you can narrow the space through which certain groups can pass. You can bump out the area for pedestrians. There's all kinds of things we can do. So that process is happening right now. And, you know, the goal is to create project-ready designs for each crosswalk in the park, hand those over to the Department of Transportation, and they will use that as their guide. And, you know, this is just another representation of things that will be consistent throughout. I would not pay much attention to these planters. I think we have steered away from anything that would be of any kind of permanence in the middle of the drives. But you get the idea. Here's another example, again, of how it might really look if it were like fully built out. If you took that whole toolkit and you used just about everything in it, you might end up with something like this. This is at 84th Street, 82nd Street, 84th Street. This is a very busy crossing. It's a fast crossing. It's a downhill slope. Bikes go fast through here. You've got Delacorte on one side. You've got our yard building, our workspace on the other. And what you see here is different signals that are much more aimed at pedestrians. A flashing beacon here that can be activated on both sides. Clearly a sort of a different pedestrian zone. And this is a tabletop intersection. It's not the kind of thing that we're going to be using a lot, but in extreme places like this, it might be a good solution. It is not a speed bump like you might be familiar with on the west side on some side streets. It is a much more gradual sloping hump that is absolutely intended to slow down people who are going fast and create more of a seamless crossing for pedestrians. Moving on to some other recommendations that we have. Particularly in the southern end of the park, folks know that there are a number of archways that go underneath the drives. These archways are original parts of the park designed by Frederick Olmsted and Calvert Vaux as a way to get people across the drives without interference of any kind. Many of them are located near some of our highest volume crossings. And, this is just a suggestion. I think there was also a certain amount of feedback after we released this that we would somehow be forcing pedestrians, down into these tunnels. That's not the case. We are just suggesting, as here at Dip Rock, you can see there are two very clear ways to get to the other side of the drive here. One is through this graceful archway, and one is to go up on the drives and cross that way. We think with some better signage and some better landscaping, we can just make those arches more obvious, probably better lighting too. We recognize that, they might not be for everybody, but I think especially tourists have no idea that they're there. And if we can just divert some of them, that's a good thing. In terms of the cross park stuff for bikers, there is already a shared path at 97th Street and the transverse. It's actually just south of the 97th Street transverse, where my cursor is, if you can see that. After taking a longer look at it, we think the path just north of the transverse might be a better option. It's a little wider, giving everybody a little more room, but it would essentially be an upgrade to what is an existing shared path in the park. 102nd Street is also a place where you can get across the park more easily if you're on wheels and legally. And we want to examine the possibility of making this more of a safe passage for bikers, just so that they, have a clear path across in a way that pedestrians know that they are allowed to be there, bikers know that they're allowed to be there, and hopefully you avoid people just, moving willy-nilly across the footpaths. Likewise, we think there might be some room on 86th Street to do something a little different. Right now, folks know that, this is already a very compromised pathway because NYPD vehicles are routinely parked there. We think that with a little bit of organization and controlling, we can at least get those cars over to one side, allowing for more of a shared path across, which is really right at the center of the park. 86th Street is effectively the middle of the park. And of course, with all of this, we do intend to do a lot of outreach. I know the community boards are going to have a lot of concerns about various things. We intend to educate people about the new rules of the road and how things are supposed to be. The NYPD is absolutely going to partner with us on that. And if we don't get the kind of cooperation we are hoping for, we will follow that up with enforcement. So that was all the near-term stuff. By near-term, I'm sure I'll get this question. What are you talking about? The conversation with DOT, which is going to do all of this repaving work, is they would like to begin this in the spring when paving season returns. So we're talking like April, May, June, somewhere in there. They may not get all the way around the 6-mile loop in that first season of, in 2025. They may have to come back and complete it in 2026. But that's an open question. We'll have to see how far they can move, how quickly. It is an easier road to pave than, your average city streets. We don't have a lot of utilities. We don't have a lot of manhole covers. Obviously, we don't have cars that have to be recirculated. So it's a little bit of a unicorn in terms of how long it will actually take them to get the job done. But they are fired up and eager to get the information they need to get this done. Okay, also in the sort of medium-term bucket, for those of you who are very familiar with the southern end of the park, you know that it gets very narrow down here at this one sort of corner down by 6th Avenue and 59th Street, basically. And one of the reasons why it's so narrow is that it lacks the pedestrian lanes that otherwise exist outside of the drive and go almost all the way around both sides of the loops, but they disappear down here. And it would be great if we could figure out a way to essentially close the loop and add space for everybody here. This, right here, the drive's really squeezed down to 2 lanes with essentially nothing on either side of that other than, gravel and grass. So it's a sticking point that we would love to address. We are going to get rid of the signals. As I said, DOT is going to manage that. They will be much lower down when we are complete. I think Prospect Park is going to get the same signals. Anybody who's been on the West Side Drive knows that there are signals that are more oriented towards bikers out there, and it does seem to work a little bit better. Finally, well, not finally, importantly, in the medium term, DOT believes that the transverse roads could be made safe for bikers, and that the existing sidewalks that are down there now and very little used by pedestrians, that a higher and better use for those sidewalks might be a bike lane. That would be one way in each direction. And for the folks who are just trying to get across the park to get from one side to the other, that this could be a very attractive, safe option that would take that much more pressure off the park and put them down here in a way that we think could be made safe. There are 4 transverses across the park. We're going to start at 86th Street again because it's the one in the middle. But if it works there, our hope is that it can work on the other transverses. Pedestrians would still be allowed down there, especially at night. There is a community of folks who feel better on those transverses at night than in the park itself. We understand that. They will be lit, and I think some striping can be made to create it safe for pedestrians as well. There are very few numbers of them at the end of the day. Finally, we are frustrated by the state of pedicabs in the park. I'm sure everybody here shares that frustration. We don't think they really add much to how New Yorkers experience it. We think they, to a very large degree, target out-of-town tourists and do so in a way that is exploitative. And we would like to figure out some combination of changing the regulations, increasing enforcement to make that better. Finally, in the long-term bucket, this is another view of something we showed you earlier. The big difference here is that the pedestrian path is elevated. There is a curb here. This is a direction that a lot of cities are moving in. It adds an extra level of safety for the pedestrians who are on there, makes it, basically very difficult to impossible for a biker to sort of get up there. So it's just a thought. It would be expensive, it would be hard, but we thought it was an interesting idea. Similarly, I mentioned, that there are a few spots in the park that we know could benefit from a re-engineering. This is East 72nd Street, which many of you are probably familiar with. It's a downhill slope. The boathouse is down here. This is the transverse going across 72nd Street. And it's one of the few places on the drives today that are, sort of counter-directional. Folks going from west to east end up sort of having to go up into traffic to get across onto East 72nd Street. And it's tricky. And, we think by funneling folks up onto a narrow corridor and making this crossing much more direct rather than the sort of free-for-all that happens in here right now, that would be better. So again, just to get you up to date, this study is, we've worked arm in arm with the Department of Transportation and the New York City Parks Department in coming up with these suggestions. Everybody is on board with the scale and scope of them. We now have to do an analysis of every crosswalk so we know exactly how we're re-engineering each one. We are going to continue to do this in collaboration with DOT and parks. And our hope is that folks will begin to see changes as early as this spring. So that is the presentation. I am sure you have questions. So
Thank you very much, Dick.
Okay.
Thank you. If anybody from the public has a question, please raise your hand now on the Zoom. And yeah, just one second. Is it? Also anybody from the board.
Rachel.
Okay. All right, so we're going to first call on the members of the public, and then we will call on the members of the community board itself. We'll go through the room first, and then we'll go through Zoom, and then we will come to the board that is in the room first. And I just want to remind everybody that tonight we are not being asked to come up with a resolution or a letter of support. So with that, I ask you to be concise and brief. So did you have your hand up, sir? If you could state your name and affiliation, please.
MCB7. My name is Paul Crickler. I live on Roosevelt Island, but I use the park all the time. David, I've got huge thank you for you. Huge big look. I think if I had my wish list of things that I wanted to be in terms of change in the park, you've done 99% of it. I love how you're keeping people separate to keep them safe. I love the idea of the raised running path there for pedestrians and walkers, or anything you can do like you're doing. I like the tabletop you're thinking about for the worst parts. I absolutely love the idea of the 86th Street transverse. I've ridden my bike across that transverse way too many times. It's way too scary. It's exactly what we're looking for. So thank you. And the bridle path as well. So having given you all these huge thank yous, I want to give you one suggestion and one further thought area thing. The suggestion is on the moderate speed, the middle for the cyclists, and the faster one. I would love it if you could make those two pavements different colors. If you had pedestrian one color, the slower two wheels and the faster wheels, different colors, all three of them, I think it'd go a huge way to making sure everyone's clear where they should be and where they shouldn't be. I think it's a massive opportunity right now. You're doing all this amazing work. I can't imagine the coloring would dramatically change the price. I could be wrong there. The second thing I'll ask about is going back to your comment before about the private vehicles, the vehicles that are parked on the bridle path 86th Street. I've been there multiple occasions. There are the private cars of NYPD. I've also seen that the private cars I've seen sort of placards in there, Conservancy Operations Certificate. It's a fake dummy thing which just says I can park it for free because I have free parking. I would love it. You could be much more aggressive and get rid of all the cars there. Cars should not be driving to park there or sitting there parking. All that space should be for us, the people who either want to walk around, ride our bikes around, or do other nice things. It shouldn't be for any cars at all. So thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. I'll go to Ira,
Yeah.
and then after Ira, Rich. Welcome back, Rich.
My comment is really short.
Yeah.
I agree, it's a wonderful plan. I like the idea of the colors, it's wonderful. My only issue is that I'm part of a bike bus that comes through the park once a month, not often, but it's really hard to get the kids to ride in the fast lane in the middle. And for some reason, they tend to ride them close to the right side, which would be the fast lane. So that's all, really. Just once a month.
So you're saying that kids just naturally gravitate towards one side or another, basically, is what you're saying? They feel safer on the side?
They've actually done, they've tried to put him in the fast lane, in the slow lane, but it didn't work. So it was easier to ride the kid in the fast lane, so we all go in the fast lane.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have the parked vehicles behind us and fast bikers, so whatever, just once a month though.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Rich Robbins, who is a former Community Board 7 member. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this. It's really personal to me. I was on the board at the time that a beloved pediatrician, Daniel Cameraman, was killed trying to get across the park, and proposed a resolution that was passed unanimously by the board in February of 2020, calling for a task force with the Conservancy, the precincts and DOT to address this issue. And I agree, this plan is phenomenal. It's 99% of the way there, and it's fabulous. One thing that was in that resolution, which is an easy fix, but I didn't see it in this proposal, is just making really clear signage. Because bicyclists, as they're riding through the park, it's not clear where the crosses are. And especially the one that's at 97th Street right now, there's no sign letting cyclists know, if you want to get across the park, here's a safe, legal way of doing it. So that's really important. And just having signage, there's a lot of signage throughout the park saying where cyclists can't go. I think having signage just saying, here are the ways of crossing the park is, something that would be really important. Second is, currently, and I'm not sure if the plan fixes it, the cross at 97th Street just ends on the east side at the loop. It doesn't continue all the way to Fifth Avenue. And that's a real issue for cyclists because you get most of the way across the park, you think, there should be some way to get to Fifth Avenue. There's no signage. There's like some sense that there might be some way of going at 100 or 101st Street. But it's really important to be able to cross all the way to get to Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, we totally recognize that, and we are going to try and figure that out, like in a way that, makes sense for everybody.
That's great. And, if you cross the street at the end of that path, like if you cross the loop, there is a path that goes to Fifth Avenue, but again, that's labeled no cyclists.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a way of allowing cyclists. It's a pretty wide lane that's usually not that trafficked. So there might be a way for allowing cyclists to go on that path, or just having some way for cyclists to get across, because otherwise, there's the temptation to keep riding, or it's just confusion of where do I go from here.
Yeah.
But again, 99%, this is phenomenal and just so desperately needed. So congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we see 2 hands up in the on the Zoom. First one is Rachel Hodges.
Oh.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi there. Sorry for the delay. My name is Rachel Grosso Hodges. I'm a resident of the Upper West Side. I live in 90th and Columbus, and I've been following this plan or this study since its inception. So it's really exciting to see the final recommendations come to fruition. And I really do support everything in here. So thank you so much for the presentation and also this amazing work that you've done. My question is for the pilot program or pilot project on 86th Street, on the 86th Street Traverse. I'm curious to know why the vehicle lanes are 14.5 feet. That seems pretty wide to me. I think most city standards are 12-foot vehicular lanes or less than that, I think down to 9 feet. And so, yeah, curious to know a little bit more about that decision and if any of that space could potentially be reallocated to make those bike lanes a little bit wider. I know that NYC DOT is piloting those double wide bike lanes, the 10-foot ones, so that there's adequate space to pass, especially for the bicyclists that are on faster, maybe e-bikes. So yeah, thanks. I'm curious to hear your answer.
It's a great question. And I think the answer, and Erica, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it's really about the buses that cross town through these transverses. And the transverses are not just kind of narrow, but they also curve. And some of those buses are like the doubles, you know, the double long. So you have to have, yeah, whatever the technical term is.
It is an articulated bus.
Yeah, articulated. So they need extra width to kind of bend around the corners or things get unsafe quickly. So, and it is all kind of a pretty close call down there in terms of whether there's enough room for everybody, but they think that there is ultimately, or we wouldn't be proposing this. But it is very much a thing about the transverses is that you cannot make them wider. We have to work with what's there. Some of them are actually a little wider than others, just within the 4 transverses. So there are slight variations in each. But that's an engineering challenge that we hope to overcome. But again, in terms of the width, I think that's why you see that width there. It's because of the longer buses and the curving nature of the roads.
That makes sense. Thank you. Something else that I admired about this design that I just wanted to point out were the concrete barriers between the vehicular lanes and the bicycle lanes. And I hope that that's part of the final implementation, because I think that would go a long way to making it feel like an all ages and abilities facility.
Yeah, I don't think we would consider this any other way. It's just, it's too precarious down there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think there's Jaren Curry on the Zoom with the hand up. You may go ahead, Jaren.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate it, and I love all the ideas. One quick question. I believe you mentioned that you would allow pedestrians on these transverses for the bikes. Would you create like a lot of lane for them, or would they just be able to go down there?
That's a good question. I think probably a lane, on the side would be a good idea. I think we would not necessarily be encouraging pedestrians to go down there during the day. I think there's lots of ways to get through the park pretty directly on foot. But yeah, there is a universe of folks who have to cross the park at night. Many are like hospital workers just trying to get to the subway or whatever it is. And we want to allow for that. So, that it's a good question. And I'm not here to say that we have a definitive answer, but I think you raise a proper caution.
Well, thank you.
Those were all the members of the public that we could see. I don't think there's anybody else. So I'm going to now open up the floor here. But before I do that, actually, David, would it be possible for us to get a copy of this presentation to share on our website?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'll go to Andrew first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
David, thank you for this presentation. It was really terrific.
Great.
I was very pleased to see you looking at the possibility of using north of 86th Street transverse, where private vehicles, frequently the police officers' vehicles, are parked now, and making that a possible east-west route in the center of the park for bicycles. I think that would be a lot safer than the transverse, even if the sidewalks are given over to bikes, because somebody's gonna at some point go into the road. I just foresee that happening.
Mhm.
And that way, pedestrians could continue to use the sidewalks and bikes would have their own right of way right through the park. And I'm wondering how long you're going to take to investigate that with the Central Park Precinct and others.
Well, I mean, I think we have a meeting set up with Parks soon to talk about the 97th Street and 102nd Street and 86th Street. The Parks Department, ultimately has jurisdiction over the footpaths and the bridle paths, whereas DOT has jurisdiction over the drives themselves. So there's a slight agency difference there. But I mean, hopefully it's some of the first things that can happen, because they are not necessarily very infrastructure intensive, these cross park, crossings, because, you're really just rededicating something as a shared path. And as somebody previously said, putting more signage up to make that clear. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, especially on the ends, and especially on these ends on the east side, that are, just a little longer than the ones on the west side. We'll have to put some thought into that, but that conversation has begun, and hopefully.
As a follow-up to that question, if you allow bicycles on the sidewalks in the 86th Street transverse, there is now a bus stop where the police precinct is, and it's announced on the buses and everything. How would a bus rider or somebody going to the precinct get out there if bikes are speeding down the sidewalk?
Just like that happens in all kinds of other spots around the city. I don't underestimate that will have to require, there will be a break right there in the concrete wall, and there'll have to be some allowance for access to not just the precinct, but there are a couple of shops in there that are workshops. This will not be a fully continuous divider, but I think the gaps will be small, and I think everyone's just going to have to learn to take a little bit of extra care.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. Anybody from Parks? We said we would alternate. Who has a question or a comment? Nobody? Okay. Ken, go ahead.
How many questions do I get?
Just try to be concise. I mean, I hope it's
34.
34, I have 33.
I do have time.
For real, Ken, I invite you to call me directly if you want, and we can talk about it.
I won't take up too much time. First of all, I would say 98%, not 99%.
Great.
But pretty close. I'm wondering about the you said you're getting rid of the traffic lights, and there are now 47 traffic lights in the park on the loop. But then you said you're replacing them with more appropriate lights.
Yeah.
Are you planning on reinstalling or putting more appropriate lights on every single one of replacing every single one of the 47, or are you gonna do it on a case basis?
Probably not. That's part of the crosswalk analysis. Will be a determination as to whether we actually need a light at every crosswalk that's out there. And Sam Schwartz is doing that analysis, and I think those determinations will be made based on data where we know that there are high volumes of pedestrians, or maybe like a particularly blind approach or a downhill approach. These are all things that affect the speed and relative danger of a particular crosswalk. So, but yeah, no, it's not assumed that every place that has a signal now is gonna get a signal going forward.
Great, and I like how you're recognizing that this is not a street any longer. And that it's a recreational space and it requires different treatments. I don't know how many of the tier city parks you found actually had traffic lights, but I can't think of any that has them.
Yeah.
Also, another thing is, you don't address this, the entrances to the park are still for motor vehicles, or they allow access for motor vehicles. And after what happened on the Hudson River bike path, I think in 2019, was it? They finally, after that horrible tragedy, they put in the bollards up and down the Hudson River Greenway. Even right before that happened, somebody got a car into the park and was driving at like 60 or 70 miles an hour and could have hit somebody, could have killed somebody, actually ended up killing himself. But are there any plans to make it more difficult or impossible to drive a car through an entrance into the park?
I think the short answer to that is no. I think, you do see barricades out there now that are movable. The discussion over more permanent bollards is one that has sort of gone back and forth with the PD every once in a while. But the long and the short of it is there has to be a way for emergency vehicles to get into the park and to do so relatively efficiently. We've got 843 acres and 42 million visitors, and things do happen. And
Yeah, I just note that there are, I don't know whether it's feasible, but they have retractable bollards. Many places, so you just have a key and it goes down when you have an emergency vehicle or anybody else.
Yeah.
Something to think about. And lastly, Columbus Circle, have you given any thought to allowing cyclists on that very broad path at the Columbus Circle corner, allowing cyclists to legally go to the circle rather than dismount, which is the current rule?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. It is, I think, sort of this path right here. I think right now, like it's not in the report. And by the way, if you go to our website, there is a landing page that includes a lot of this information, plus a link to the full report, which you are not seeing here. The full report is 60 pages long and includes a lot more data and information. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to go check it out. Maybe Erica or Shatik, you can put the link in the chat. Oh, no, we can't chat here. I don't think we can chat. Honestly, that end of the park is so congested right now, and that is a separate issue that we're trying to deal with through separate means. Columbus Circle is right now just full of vendors and pedicabs and, well, at the moment, Christmas holiday shopping. I think in general, we're trying not to invite more people in that direction, even though there is also a permitted bike rental facility right there. So, I mean, all that is to say, it's like, I think it's a good suggestion and we will consider it. But it leans a little bit away from what we were trying to do, which is keep people off the footpaths as much as possible.
Anybody else? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for this presentation. I do think this is an incredible improvement. 98, 97, whatever percentage, it's progress. A couple of just notes that I wanted to make. On the illustration that you showed for what I'm just going to call a high-speed or low-speed bike lane, I do believe that there's going to be some confusion because the illustration shows a bike, except for the double arrow. So, you know, it seems to me that anyone looking at that is going to say, well, I'm a bike, I can ride it. It doesn't matter what speed I'm going. So I think we're going to need some improvement on, maybe it's the change of color or it's a shading, or maybe, you know, I don't know the answer, but if I was on a bike riding and I saw a bike emblem on both lanes, I would say I can go to either one. It doesn't matter whatever that double arrow is. I don't know. I think it's confusing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What just happened? Are you still seeing it?
We're seeing you going through pages.
No, it's gone now.
We were seeing
But
it.
we were seeing it. We
Yeah,
understand. Yeah.
Okay,
we're
but you were
on
able
the
to
same
hear
page.
my question or comment?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was
He
just.
did.
Okay. So,
Well,
do
I
you
was
wanna
trying to
say-
make a quick point that, you know, I hear you. We search the universe for something that distinguished between a regular bike and a fast bike, and what you see here are these three little lines coming out of, you know, the fast biker that is intended to indicate speed.
That's the
We
wind.
thought about like a lightning bolt or something like that, you know, but like that vernacular like doesn't exist right now in sort of the international signage universe. So we did our best, but I hear you.
I can,
Okay.
you know, one thing I could just add to that as well. This is where some education comes in. So we will, with something like this, we're going to be reaching out to all the bike rental companies in the area, making sure that they are aware of the new rules of the road that they can share with folks, and also all the bike clubs that come in. So, you know, obviously we won't catch anybody, but hopefully we can catch the biggest mass of bikers that can set a tone out there in the park.
Okay, well, thank you for that. As it relates to the fast slow, it was interesting to hear, I guess someone from the public commented on, or actually, I'm sorry, it was you, saying, or somebody about the
Doesn't matter. Keep
right
going.
lane. Thank you, cop. Okay, so in typical motor vehicle, you know, highways, you know, a highway or a parkway, your passing lane is your left lane. Your right lane is kind of a slower lane. However, I do note that the pedestrian lane is on the far left. So it seems to me that if you have a higher speed vehicle, you probably want to keep them farther away from pedestrians. So I'm just thinking out loud here, but I do.
Yeah, it's a little odd that the fastest lane is the right lane, but.
Yeah, I think that's just maybe counterintuitive if someone is familiar with the rules of the road on driving a car or otherwise.
We know that this is a little backwards from what occurs out in the world. It's also somewhat in line with, however, the way the park has worked for years, which is sort of pedestrians on the inside. The critical point is that on all the entrances into the park that are provided for emergency vehicles and other cars, they all enter from this side, from the right, so to speak. And rather than have those vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, other trucks that need to be in the park, cross all the lanes of traffic and get into what would naturally be the fast lane, our decision was to just leave them on the outside. So they come in and they just sit, they hug that curb and they never go anywhere else. Additionally, in the southern end of the park, you know, it is the regulations that the horse carriages have to be in the far right lane. That just has been the way forever. So down there, you know, there are other sort of permitted uses in the right lane that we think would be hard to change. That would be a lot of education for a lot of people.
Thank you for addressing that. And the only other three things I have is on that 86th Street transverse, it really does seem like a great idea to have the bike lanes that are in two directions. I am very concerned about conflict you're gonna have with pedestrians. So and I appreciate what you said, but I actually think that it's sort of counterintuitive. I think that pedestrians would be more likely to walk during the day, less at night. And so I think you may have conflict. It almost, and I don't want to exclude pedestrians, but it seems to me that it should be a bike only. Just because I just think it's so narrow, and I don't think pedestrians should actually be there. But I understand, I'm not trying to exclude anyone, but I see conflict. And if you have a 5.5 foot width and you're talking about splitting the lane, you have 2.5 feet for a bike or a pedestrian, especially a bike, that seems really narrow.
Yeah.
So, and if I just want to finish my point, then I'll shut up. With respect, yes, there is a bus stop and a police station on 86th Street. It seems to me that this might be a really good opportunity. And I just asked my colleague on what it's called, the traffic signal prioritization, transit signal prioritization, where when the bus comes, if they're going to stop, and they don't always stop there, that the bus driver could activate the TSP, and that red light would be for for pedestrians and bikers if they're both there.
That's a great idea.
I mean, I don't want to have traffic, but I know because I take that bus almost every day, and I can say that it's very rare that it actually stops, but sometimes it does stop.
Yeah.
Like someone getting off the bus is going in those multiple doors is going to step out, and if there are bikers in the way, it's going to be a conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's an excellent point.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daria, you had something?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much, David. This is, again, amazing. It's great to hear from you again. This is an amazing plan. The only thing, and I think I've told you this before, is that whenever there's a change that relates to traffic, that you integrate a lot of public opinion and how the color schemes are and what the signage means, because the people who use the park aren't just necessarily the active users who then get very familiar with how things run, but we have people who are kids and also tourists. And so in order to kind of make it as universal as possible, I would bring in different constituencies besides just the bike companies, and also just talking to DOT and parks. So that's my one suggestion, is to bring in a broader community regarding signage and color schemes. But that's it. Thank you. This is, again, a great presentation.
I'm going to see if there's anybody with their hand up on the Zoom. Is there?
No. I have a question.
Nobody? Oh.
I thought Daria was gonna ask it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, go ahead.
So David, thank you so much. I've been going to Central Park since I was a very small child, even before I can remember, and I love it so much, and this brings me so much joy. I want to flag, Gail Brewer was on the Brian Lehrer show this morning talking about the very fast changing, the fast pace of e-bikes and, all the new kinds of vehicles that we're having to cope with faster than we can really think about it. So I'm sure you're thinking about it as well, and I won't ask a question about it. I just want to flag it. But earlier, Daria had asked on another parks proposal about doing work in the spring and summer when the parks are most busy, but it really is the only time you can do the work. So I'm wondering what the thought is about the paving work that you're going to, I'm so excited here, try to do it starting as early as this spring, but how you're thinking you would roll that out with so many people trying to use the park at that very time. I know it's late. Thanks.
So yeah, that's a very interesting point. And this is what I can tell you. And it's based on the experience of Prospect Park, which has had some of its drive repaved in the last couple of years. And basically what the DOT does is it sticks to a Monday, Friday schedule. They mill and groove the existing pavement for 3 days, and then they pave for 2 days. And then they get out during the weekend, which is when the crowds really explode. So, I think they just go chunk by chunk, and do what they can on a 5-day schedule. and then they go to the next, and then they go to the next. And it will be, you know, tricky how folks get rerouted during that time because they do take over the whole road. But I think everybody will understand that, you know, this is a good thing. We're getting some new pavement, and I think they move extra quick when they're in the park. I think it's going to be not like the avenues where like they show up and they mill your avenue and then they disappear for 3 weeks and then they come back. That's not going to happen. But you know, I think avoiding the weekends will be I think a priority, which hopefully will alleviate, you know, the
mild March. You can start them.
Just to follow up on that, David, you mentioned that the part where you would have to shut down on the Upper West Side, I think you mentioned it earlier, would really only be several weeks to kind of, for the part that our district touches. That would only be how long do you anticipate for that part?
I don't want to make any promises. I don't think it's that long. I do think they, you know, once they're in there, they move pretty quickly. I'm not sure what your definition of the Upper West Side is, but I think they, I think it would be a matter of I would want to say more like a month or two rather than a week or two for sure. Like I think it takes some time. Striping happens at the end of all that.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, sorry, can't make any promises.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see this, and I think it's 99.9% there.
I'm with her.
But I have a very specific question about the archways. I know you mentioned that you were going to use them as a way to leave the foot traffic from the roads, and I just wanted to see. I love the archways, but some of them are quite deep and they don't have any lighting in them. So I often feel a little unsafe, especially, but even during the day, but at dusk especially. So I was wondering if there's some type of, improvements there.
Yes, is the short answer. DOT actually is responsible for the lighting in these things. Who knew? But like, I think because they're underneath the road, that's their job. And we were talking to them about that. And we've heard other things, you know, a lot of them don't, some of the approaches are kind of steep. They don't have handrails. We'd like to address that. And just, in general, make them more inviting to everybody. Some of them have drainage issues. We would like to fix that. So yes, I think we're talking about every trick in the book that we can come up with. We plan on employing.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room or on the Zoom? Anybody?
I have one fast question.
Sure.
Does any of the scope of this work, and I assume the answer is no, but does any of the scope of this work in the entire park involve any cutting down of any trees or any deep excavation? Preserving Olmsted's beautiful park. Does any of it involve any of that?
No, short answer.
Good. I thought that would be the answer, but I wanted to hear you on the record. Thank you.
I just had a couple of things. Somebody mentioned the cars that are parked on 86th Street inside the park, and they were saying that there should be absolutely no cars. I disagree with that. I would just like to say that I'm in favor of having cars that are legal in there. But of course, if somebody has an illegal placard or something, that should not be there. But I think it would be totally impractical to have a precinct next door and not have the precinct's cars parked over there. As long as they're legal, whether they're personal or professional, that's okay.
They could be parked in the precincts area of the park as opposed to in the park area of the park.
Right, that's right.
Why aren't they there right now? Is there a space? But wouldn't it be more convenient for them to be inside the precinct if it was only
They
convenient?
got plenty of room in there.
And some of them are Parks Department cars.
Yeah, and if they're legal, I don't have a problem with them. But what I do have a problem with is like fake placards or something like that.
Taking space away from the park.
And I do want to echo what Doug said about the potential for pedestrian and bike conflict on the 86th Street, the dedicated, the bike lane that you're proposing.
Yep.
Just keep that in mind. I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard about that. And, you know, overall, I won't put a number on it, but even I am totally in favor of this, this proposal, this study. In fact, if we were voting on it, I would wholeheartedly vote in favor of it. But I can't help thinking that it's a little bit bittersweet because the park is so special and it's such a nice wooded natural environment still. But now I'm seeing so many different colors and signage and lights. So there will be something lost over there, but I guess I understand why that is more necessary from a safety perspective.
Yeah.
I hear you, but
That's all.
you know, think about the 100 years during which cars were allowed on the loop. Like we have made real progress here in terms of getting those vehicles out, and you know, I don't think that'll ever go back. So I hear you, but I still think we're overall going in the right direction. It's just we have so many more people. We have 42 million visitors.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, any other questions, comments online or in the room? No. Oh, yeah.
David, just one other thing. I know I think you consult with the Central Park Precinct, and you know, there have been eras where they were strictly enforcing going through red lights, whether anybody was there or not. And there would be, you know, sort of occasional zero tolerance periods. And then they sort of shifted to more of a enforcing against failure to yield, which I think is much more reasonable. It's what we all want, as opposed to just rigidly adhering to a red light, which really, if you think about it, I think you guys recognize, doesn't really belong. That kind of thing doesn't belong in a recreational space. So I just hope you're continue to use that as your standard, failure to yield, as opposed to you know, red light violations.
Yeah. Understood. We're having very active conversations at the NYPD in general about all kinds of things, including the drives. You know, there's a new commanding officer at Central Park, Captain Magliente, who seems really fired up about, you know, trying to tackle things that have been sort of persistent problems. So we're optimistic about stuff like that.
Good.
Okay.
And yeah, just tagging on to, I'm sorry, okay. What I want to say is that, with all respect to my colleague, a discussion about whether crossing a red light or yielding can result in the same catastrophic result. And I was going to say this earlier, but I'm sort of dovetailing this into my comment. If you look at 30,000 feet up, I think, by the way, I want to say this presentation was wonderful. I think it's an incredible, you know, advancement, and I'm really looking forward to the results. Going back to Olmsted, the whole concept of Central Park was recreation, to use, you know, Ken's word. And so I just hope that you'll always think about the balance between recreation and its transportation too. But really, the original vision of Central Park was recreation. It's not about commerce, although of course we have to balance it. So I just hope that the spirit of that stays within all of your work, because if you have a speeding, you know, e-bike going through for work, I think that actually deserves less of a priority. And it does need enforcement to slow things down, even if you have a faster or slower lane, relatively speaking. Obviously safety's first, but just to remember the word recreation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think we'll let Doug have the last word on this matter. I'm assuming nobody else has anything to say on this item. So
there's one, oh, sorry, there's one hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't
really?
see that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we just raised it. Jennifer Waltz.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I just raised my hand because it was in relationship to something that was just said. My name's Jennifer Walls, longtime Upper West Side resident. I've lived all different parts of the Upper West Side. So related to the red lights, or the traffic lights, I should say, traffic signals. Once they would be replaced, I don't know, one idea I just had, I don't know if this has been discussed, but perhaps if they only changed with a pedestrian pressing a button, they'd be more likely to be followed, because if in a lot of parts of the park, the lights are turning red when there are no pedestrians crossing, and the bikers, the cyclists know that. So they're just going to go through assuming there are no pedestrians stopping. But if those red lights only were red when they meant something, you know, something relevant to the biker, maybe they'd be more likely to stop. And yeah, thank you for this presentation. I meant to say that. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I think it's full of great ideas. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much, David and Erica and Katie.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, and we really appreciate the feedback. You know, like I said, this is a plan. We're going to execute the plan, but that doesn't mean, you know, we're not listening, and we'll take into consideration all of the really great comments that were made here tonight. So thanks again.
Thank you, and you're welcome back anytime, and happy holidays.
All right.
I do want our committee, everybody here to stay, or at least the Parks and Environment Committee to stay for just 2 minutes. Old business.
I have an update on the boat basin presentation on the PDC. So we actually watched the boat basin presentation this morning.
It was presented to PDC
this morning. It was presented, and we wanted to share the news that the design was approved unanimously by all 8 members of the commission. They said that the design was elegant and addressed a lot of they were really happy to see a design being put forth that would address future and current climate challenges. And so that was very impressive to them.
Is it available for us to see?
Yes,
it is. Yes, it is now. They suggested
the YouTube recording is available.
Yeah.
We can share that.
Yeah.
I think that's it. The design, the only thing they suggested was changing some art. I'm sure it's going to change a little bit more before anything is finalized, but there is a presentation on YouTube. You guys can just check it out.
We'll forward that to the whole committee.
Yep.
I had an update, the Broadway Malls bid, not the Broadway Malls bid, but Broadway Malls Association. They asked us for a letter of support for Sherman Square, which they talked about in the last meeting. And Daria and I have actually finalized the letter. We're going to send it out. We'll share it with the committee also. And one item that actually Alex Bell had brought up was about the news racks, the unsightly, really useless news racks that you find everywhere on the Upper West Side and all over the city. They serve really no purpose. They're an eyesore. So Eric Botcher, council member Eric Botcher, had a bill out for that. And Alex was very interested in following up on that. I actually spoke to Eric Botcher's office last week. It turns out that the bill is now, it's been passed and it's being, they're just waiting for the mayor to sign off on it. They expect him to sign off on it. And what it'll do is just set some standards for the design and where they can be placed, where they cannot be placed. So it'll provide, just something like a better streetscape, as Shaun Abreu said. And it should be implemented in the next 6 months or so.
Right.
So that was it.
Great.
And with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Happy
Second.
holidays,
Yes,
all.
Happy holidays, everybody.